Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Max Boykin. I'm the manager of the Save HIV Funding Campaign. Thank you all for joining us for our fourth installment of our Summer of Advocacy uh, training series. And this being our fourth installment, this one being focused around digital advocacy. Our first one being around legislative engagement. Our second one being around creating community teach-ins. And the third one on traditional media engagement. And this one, the fourth installment, is following up around digital advocacy. We had some of those questions come up in our traditional media engagement training a couple weeks ago, and I am excited for a wonderful panel of brilliant communication experts in talking about how in which we're able to talk to our elected leaders, how we're talking to our community through social media in order to be the best advocates we can be. I'm going to go ahead and introduce a couple of our esteemed panelists, and I'll actually let them introduce themselves to y'all. But first and foremost, I will introduce Victoria, or I'll let her introduce herself, Victoria with Positive Women's Network.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Siciliano. I use she, they, ella pronouns, and I am Positive Women's Network's communications director. Like Max said, really happy to be with all of you today.
Thank you so very much, Victoria. And next up, DJ.
Hey everybody, DJ Kessler. I'm a consultant working on digital advocacy for campaigns and causes. I've had the great opportunity to work with Prep for All. And I've in 2020 led Pete Buttigieg's social media team, have worked with Democrats up and down the ballot, as well as progressive causes. So really excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you so very much, DJ. Um, and last but certainly not least, when this wonderful panel of folks to talk around digital advocacy, someone I get to work with every day, and continues to make sure that wonderful advocacy gets put out, and many of y'all get emails from him. I'm going to go ahead and let Michael introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Michael Chansley. I am based in East Point, Georgia. He, him, his pronouns, and I am the communications and mobilization manager with Prep for All.
Thank you so very much, Michael. And so one of the reasons that these have been happening, that we've continued and needed these trainings is people want to be able to make sure that they're able to let their legislators know. We've seen over the summer a series of bad votes by folks in Congress to continue to push an agenda such from Project 2025 and Trump's agenda that is harmful to our communities, continues to leave us in worse health outcomes. And we want to be able to make sure that we're using social media and other non-traditional media outlets as ways to be able to engage more and more folks. More and more of our community is not watching the morning news. I know even for myself, I don't have a regular cable package. And many and many and more folks don't even have that. And they get most of their news from social media, from their phones. And more folks are being consumed by also what goes on different social media sites in order to just get away from some of the other things that also people get information from. And with that, we have to be able as good advocates be able to use these tools to also make sure that more people are able to understand what's going on. I will never say that we should just be doing digital advocacy. We should also always be doing in-person engagement, both with our legislators, with people that are directly impacted, going deep into community engagement. But we also have to engage in the digital space, especially in 2025, in order to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. And because of different things that have been pushed back in social media, along with the on the ground advocacy, we have seen some wins. We have seen some things pushed back, and that includes some of the things that we have most recently seen around like the PEPFAR fight. And even as we are getting updates from the Labor and HHS meeting that is in Congress today. We're getting positive feedback into making sure that we're able to continue to try to save HIV funding. So it will be important for us throughout our what we are calling accountability August to make sure our legislators are held accountable. And that means having in-person engagement with them, but that also means engaging with social media. And I will have this question open to all of the panelists as we get kicking off with our panel conversation. But the question that I have to kick off for the panelists is why do you use and what have been some of the best uses of non-traditional media in order to be the best advocates you can be? And whoever would like to kick us off.
Well, I'll take a crack at it. I would say, um, the media environment has changed so much in the last several years, but especially today, your representatives are responsive to narratives that are moving online every day because they themselves are online and their staff are online. So they're consuming news and information and content online, just like everyone here. And so it's really important that your stories are told on these platforms and that the stories of those people who you know who are impacted by certain issues and policies are told online. If you're not telling those stories, you leave a space for others to fill. So it's important that you're filling it. And as platforms continue to evolve, it's really important that we're saturating every corner of the ecosystem with the stories that need to be heard. So, influence is currency these days, and it's really important that you're leveraging it with the platforms that you have.
I would say one that I don't think people think of. I know we use TikTok a lot and Instagram Reels, but definitely remembering like how the algorithms work. In previous iterations of the Save HIV Funding Campaign, one of our most successful outlets was actually LinkedIn. You know, a lot of us we engage with policy people, we engage with public health people. So when we posted stuff, when we looked at the analytics, it showed that a lot of the stuff that we were putting out with the Save HIV Funding Campaign was primarily being seen by um, staff who were like congressional staff. So that was something, I think a lot of people think of LinkedIn as like, let me show off what I'm doing with my work or let me use this to look for a job. But it actually was like very helpful in making sure that the right eyes were getting on a campaign. It almost like it cut out all of the middle people and went directly to who we wanted to lay eyes on that campaign.
I can go next. I think for Positive Women's Network, it's really about displaying the power of people living with HIV, of being led by them in our organizing. And we always say those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. We need to see that now, I think, more than ever. So we want to make sure always that our platforms reflect our community. We want our members to see themselves in our communications. And that's absolutely crucial for mobilizing people living with HIV, which is our ultimate goal. We want to empower them to tell their stories, like DJ was saying. We're already seeing the impact of the fascist state, not just in terms of fear in our community, but a real scarcity of resources, medication, housing, food. And so all these stories really need to be heard, deserve to be heard. And that's what's going to lead to change. So for us, that looks like we held action hours. We had a series recently of like virtual spaces where people could come and learn about an issue and then take action on that issue right then and there. We show examples of voter suppression happening in real time on election day, and we tag policymakers. We show legislative visits, our community members showing up and demanding their basic human rights to their elected representatives, and then reporting on any like stances taken, on promises made. It's a really powerful accountability tool. Because they are there, their followers are there. Everybody is seeing, how they interact or don't interact. Um, and also, I think it's important to name while all these things are amazing, social media is ultimately still a surveillance tool of the state. So I think it's important to just name that we have to be really careful about what we're posting, who we're highlighting, and especially with things like protests, I see all the time, a lot of people in the background who maybe didn't consent to be in that photo. And given the way that we're going, I just want to name that.
Um, Thank you for bringing that up, Victoria, around one, how in which we also use these pieces. I also love that you brought up also the action hour that PWN does. And folks wouldn't think that is, but is that is also a non-traditional communication term as well, of also having just using Zoom as a space to also communicate with folks and let them know what's going on. Um, and this also, Michael brought up this a little bit with bringing up the LinkedIn piece. What are some of the different types of social media that you use to reach specific audiences? Either it being community members, or as Michael had also said, as like sometimes it's also getting to staffers of elected officials, or even getting in touch with elected officials. What are some of the ways in which folks have used different social media to get in touch with particular audiences?
One example that I can give, well, I mean, it's one of many examples similar that I've seen. So, but Prep for All, our most viral post was in response to misinformation on the Shade Room when there was that conservative rumor. Let me not just say the Shade Room because it was also on Fox News, but our most viral post to date was just a Mythbuster post that we didn't plan out. It was spur of the moment, responding to something where there was based on a SAMHSA grant, it got twisted into like the Biden administration is paying for crack pipes. That was what Shade Room was saying. That's what all of the internet blogs were saying. And because people were already so outraged by it, when we tagged Fox News and the Shade Room in the post, and again, it was a quick post. I even for my own graphic design, it was just thrown together. I can admit that. I don't have an ego. But because it was something that so many people were talking about, and we tagged those entities and used popular hashtags, it ended up going viral. So many people started reposting it and sharing it. And it now, and I mean, I really didn't see much of that myth going forward after that. I mean, we weren't the only one who put something out, but to see because it was such a sensationalized post, we were able to correct misinformation and just kind of like dead that rumor that that's what was going on. So definitely just thinking of sometimes you don't want to flame the fuel if it's not getting a whole lot of attention. You don't want to give attention to misinformation, but then sometimes you have to say something about it when it gets like really um popular and everybody's talking about it. And one thing you can kind of shoehorn your own message in when people are really sensationalizing something. So we not only got the like dispel that myth, but then we also, also iterate it, and it's actually, talking about increasing access to like testing and prep access. So countering misinformation while also shoehorning our own information into that. And that actually really helped um people figure out like what was really going on. They weren't taking Fox News or Shade Room or any of these other blogs or news sites. What they weren't taking a soundbite, or if they heard the soundbite, they got the correct information from that.
I think to build on Michael's point, I think sometimes timing is more important than perfection. It's really important to, if there's a breaking news moment or an inflection point that it's important to respond to or to insert the issue into the conversation. It's oftentimes more important just to get out there and say it than to make sure that you have the perfect graphic or you have the perfect post. As long as what you're saying is accurate and passionate and it's urgent, like get out there and say it. And in addition to that, to take a step back, I think the platform for me depends on the goal and what my client or the organization is trying to accomplish. So I always start there. What's the goal and who's the audience? And it's important for me, and I'm sure that Victoria and Michael will agree, that sometimes I'm not the audience for um, for the platform. An example would be in 2020, working for Pete Buttigieg during one of the debates, and I led Pete's debate war room, co-led his war room. We were really active on Snapchat. I'm like an elder millennial. I'm not using Snapchat. And it was really important for us to take his message to a younger demographic. And in one debate day, we ended up reaching 44 million users on Snapchat. Granted, it's a presidential campaign, but it's going to a new platform, reaching a new audience in a timely moment, and just making sure that we were had a presence there. So I would think, to go back to goal, audience, and timing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for us, we really just want to be where our members are. We want to be where our community is. So that's kind of how we decide where we're going to be and what we're going to put the most energy and time into is where our members are already existing. And sometimes that's to our detriment in terms of like earned media and really getting us out there in the larger scope of the conversation. But the goal is always number one, just engaging our community, our people, empowering them. And then they go on to get that earned media on their own social media platforms, so it's really wonderful to see that. But like most of our members are older. They're in their 50s and 60s, a lot of them. And so Facebook tends to be the place where our members are. And that tends to be where we put a lot of energy. And we see, we have different audiences on different platforms, and we, try to be at least a little bit um, everywhere folks are, but we definitely have more of like an ally audience on like Instagram or LinkedIn. And so we spend a little bit less time there, depending on, the goal or the campaign.
Thank you all for answering that question. Um, and so, what, given some of that space, and because Michael, you had also brought up the shade room. And I also come from a generation of media takeout and other sensationalized news sites or news like channels that are places that I get a lot of that not just myself, but a lot of folks in my community get their information from.
My
Um,
guilty pleasure too. So
what do you why do you think so many people are choosing to get their news and information from there? And what are some of the pitfalls of getting our news from social media channels?
I think it's easily digestible. I've seen people say that if you put random text on a picture, people will believe it, no matter how silly it is with no sources. It's just you see, it's easily digestible. It doesn't take the mental energy to that it would take to read like a full article. Especially, I mean, especially if, like, again, if it's not even a video that you have to read, that you have to watch. It's just literally like even if someone with low literacy can read 15 words over a picture. And from there, because it lacks any kind of background or depth, it doesn't challenge you to try to figure out what's really going on. You can just take it as like a sound bite. I feel like you're an expert on something. I mean, it feeds our ego. You become an expert on something with little to no effort on actually learning on what that's about. Which can work because sometimes I don't want to do a deep dive on what's going on with a pop star but I may want, or a reality TV personality. I just want to get like, okay, what's the joke? What is everybody talking about? I don't need to do a deep dive on this. The problem that becomes is when you're talking about real political issues or real social issues that impacts people's real lives because you can't always translate that information in just a few words or a picture or Instagram reel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead, DJ.
I was just gonna, I think the why is a lot to unpack, and I don't know how much time do we have, but I think part of it is the algorithms that are that the social media companies, what levers they're pulling to influence the algorithm on a daily basis. These algorithms are a black box. We try to game them out based on the analytics, like Michael's tracking. He mentioned his LinkedIn example and the data we have. Um, but we aren't under the hood in terms of how these platforms are running every day. And so part of it is that the algorithm. We know that what we know from tracking is that outrage and anger, emotional content tends to trend. As a consumer, I think, our people are busy. There's an old phrase in politics and advocacy that, or an old term called low information voter. And I actually think people are high information these days. They're just consuming a lot of poor information online. People are on their phones all day. Everyone's consuming content and information. And so the platforms need to be more vigilant uh, in delivering on the duty that they have to their users to provide factual information, and they're just really failing to meet the moment. And that for us is a challenge because that's what we're going up against every day. So as advocates, we have to make sure that we are gaming the algorithm to ensure that factual information is reaching the people who need it most, and that in turn our representatives are hearing from the people who are consuming the truth.
Yeah, I would add, like both of y'all said, I think news media has always had to find a way to engage an audience that wants entertainment, maybe more than it wants news. And so now I think I'm seeing a lot of publications that adhere to journalistic ethics and standards are behind paywalls, because of this low consumption. And so we're making this big distinction between who has access to real facts. And it tends to be formally educated and financially resourced people who are motivated to seek out facts. You also need that motivation, versus everyone else. And so I think also people want authenticity, they want real human stories, real voices. And that does pave the way for opinions and misinformation to masquerade as fact. But I think it's important to name that it gives a platform to people who are otherwise excluded from discourse, like trans folks and undocumented folks who are maybe not safe taking it to the streets, but can still make their voices heard and advocate from home. So,
Thank you all.
There's a good comment in a chat that says read the content but verify if it sounds shady. Sometimes that could be your entryway to finding information, something you see a quick sound bite online, but that doesn't mean stop there, dig deeper and see if it's something that it looks like you could be passionate about or information that you feel like you need to know. You want to make sure you're taking a deep dive as well.
Yes, and completely agree with that. And thank you for putting that in the chat, Wanda. I've been seeing you on many a calls lately, so it's good to see you for real. With that, I also wanted, and there was a lot of good points again brought out of what y'all just said. Um, Sometimes people are like, there's so many different platforms. What do I post on for what? And then the other question that comes to happen to a lot of people is like, am I supposed to post on the same thing on multiple platforms? I know this is not, I'm not saying what the rule is, but if you could give people thoughts on which platforms to post what type of content, and what type of platforms, or is it okay to put the same type of content out multiple times?
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, we were both like staring at each other. I always go with because most of us navigating are not navigating as like businesses or organizations, but we're navigating our own personal social media. And we know who our audience is. My audience who follows me on Instagram is not the same as the Prep for All Instagram. It's a completely different audience. So I know how, only you know, like the people who follow you, whether that be your family and friends on Facebook or a wider audience on TikTok or Instagram or the masses on Twitter. Um, you know who your following is, you know how you would authentically engage and put out content. I am just not a TikTok person, as DJ pointed out. Like Snapchat, TikTok is past my youth days, so that's just not how I can authentically engage people. But I can engage, I can definitely write an engaging few sentences or paragraphs on Facebook or LinkedIn. That's my lane. That's how I engage people. It would not come off as authentic if I used other platforms in the same way. It would not be digested the same, especially if you're looking at an app like say TikTok, where people are audio visual learners versus YouTube, where people like long form content. So just figuring out like how you want to engage your audience and what works best. Um, I think just figuring out what works best for you, because if I started posting content on TikTok right now, I would probably get like 3 followers. So it's not my lane, but I can post something on Facebook and a lot of people, especially if my audience is other advocates. I follow a lot of advocates on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if my audience is the HIV advocacy community, those are the best platforms for me to post information.
Yeah, I'll build on what Michael said. I think, as the three of us are practitioners, and I would say for, like Michael, for me, thinking about how I'm advising clients or organizations on how they should post is different from me personally. But speaking to how I advise them to post, I would say, again, always start with the goal, who's the audience, and what's the message. And you can spread the message across each platform in different ways, but you have to game that platform and meet that audience where they are. So you can repurpose content across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, um, and then version it for, Threads, X, Blue Sky. But it's meeting people where they are on those platforms and, really monitoring and following what is changing on those platforms to make sure that you're always putting something out that's going to get mileage. Um, and I would add too that, consistency is really important. Volume. There's some, don't assume everyone's going to see every post that you put out. So message repetition is important. As the person who may be posting content, sometimes you can feel like a broken record. You're like, man, I've said this so many times. But odds are someone is seeing it for the first time. And so it's okay to have a consistent cadence to ensure that you're getting your message out there.
Yeah, I wanted to lift up a PWN member in the chat saying, I'm almost 71 and I'm on TikTok more than anything. And we see that all the time. Like our members love TikTok. I think there's a real generational, I'm like, oh, I'm almost 40. I'm like too old for TikTok. No, that's not the case. I think and the reason, one of the things that we've really tried to do lately is just make more video content. We've put out a lot of written content, a lot of long and, exhaustive. We, want to make sure every word is perfect and use people first language and provide analysis with care. And so we end up with these really long and hard to digest sometimes messages. And now we're trying to adapt more to, something that is easier to engage with. I will say, I think on TikTok for us, we have a really like baby account on TikTok. We're like really just getting started there, but we want to put what I've seen that does well there is like person to person kind of contact, like interviews with our members, like personal stories, any of that, and like calls to action. Another like we've left X now because it's gross. And we started Blue Sky. So that's a baby account for us as well. But that is where we did more of like, it's election day and we're engaging with, wanting to tag like representatives and get the word out about what we're doing. We would do more of that there. Yeah.
And thank you all for answering that as well. Love the piece around the video. And I've actually two follow-up questions, but I also want to let folks know if you do have questions for the panelists, and it could be as simple as like what is this new social media blue sky? Or how do I make sure to use these different sites effectively? How do I even like is it important for me to have a duplicate account? All those questions that you have around digital advocacy in this current moment is welcome. So please do. I am going to pass it back to the panelists as people are formulating their questions. You can either put them in the chat or use the raise the hand feature. But with that, one of the things that was brought up was a number of organizations have left X, or formerly known as Twitter. Um, with that, and some have started to use Blue Sky. Uh, and then there's also some who like to engage red districts, and legislators use Truth Social. Um, why do people use, and what is the positives of using apps such as Blue Sky X, or even Truth Social versus the Meta apps? And why you actually don't have to go into why people stop using X. I think that is self-explanatory. But I think there are also other what has been the usefulness of using some of the newer forms, especially like Blue Sky or even like Substack?
Um, I would say each social media site kind of has its own core community. You can post something on Facebook, Instagram, and X and get three completely different mass responses. Like, I always joke, like if I see something on X and I'm like, this is Facebook, this is a Facebook tweet, a Facebook post, or if I see something on Facebook, I'm like, take that to X. People won't get that here. So I think I think that could be the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is that all of these sites have their own communities, own ways of looking at and processing information. Also, just want to throw out there if you're an organization or a business considering leaving X, it's good to just kind of go dark, because the last thing you would want is to delete your account and then someone takes that screen name and misrepresents your organization. So it's better to just you can black out your profile picture or just stop posting or put up a pinned statement saying like you're no longer engaging, but you don't want somebody to come and misrepresent your organization on that site.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Michael. I would say like Twitter for a long time has been our quote unquote like public town square when it comes to social media. For better or for worse, it's where reporters spend most of their time. It's where what some in the Beltway call the chatter class or narrative builders. So if you're looking to get a story um, pushed or a narrative to stick within Beltway Press or wherever whatever your goal is, Twitter was a place that you went, and it was helpful to be a validator on that platform. But I would say that a lot of like normal people are not as many normal people tend to be on that platform less than others like TikTok and Instagram, which are more cultural and lifestyle driven. So again, it just depends on what your goal is. I think to Michael's point, organizations can make a decision based on their values and their mission as to whether or not it's right for them to be there, but definitely ensure your brand reputation is protected if you do choose to leave the platform.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think for us, we I tend to look at the reports, like the back end, the data, how our posts are doing on different platforms. And you can see that there are different kinds of content that do better on different platforms, and you can kind of tailor it based on that. I think that's good, just evergreen advice. Um, but it is important to, I mean, for PWN, we want to make sure that we are in a community that has something to do with our values. And that was, part of the reason why we left Twitter. And I'll say like Substack too. Um, I see a lot of organizations posting on it, and just Monday they sent out a push notification to check out a Nazi blog with a swastika icon. I'm not going to, make like try to push Substack on our members and then have a push notification come through with this offensive content. And they have a history of protecting and monetizing hate speech accounts like Nazi blogs. So we're absolutely like, that is not the place for us. That's not where we're going to be. We really tend to think about like where people are and does that community match our values.
Thank you for breaking that down, each and every one of you, but definitely Victoria for bringing in those pieces. I was not aware of that piece for Substack, but I think these are some of the more nuanced and important things to think about. I do see a question in the chat, but I also see two raised hands. I'm going to go ahead and go to Wanda first, and then we'll keep moving. Wanda, you're still on mute.
Thank you for that helping hand there.
Uh,
Um, okay. All right. Victoria led to what I want to ask about. Um, I am addicted to TikTok, I'll be honest, but I do verify because there's some shady stuff that comes across there. There really is. But it's short, it's sweet, it captures your attention, and you can go from there with it. I don't post a whole lot yet, but I'm the queen of repost, if it's pertinent information. But I have heard of Blue Sky, not familiar with it, and I haven't researched it. What are some good alternatives other than, because I left X too, I just went dark. But I do still use my Facebook a lot because, as you say, there's a large following there, and I use Insta. So, um, advice from the experts, please. Thank you.
I would say if you are a more of a meta person, if you like Instagram and Facebook, but you like the format of sites like Twitter, and you don't want to have to work hard to rebuild your following if you already have a following on Instagram, your Instagram account also doubles as a Threads account, which kind of works very similar to Blue Ski. Is it Blue Ski or Blue Sky? I'm sorry.
Blue Sky.
Work pretty similar to Blue Sky and Twitter, but you can use your existing Instagram account. You just have to download the Threads app. So that's one that I would definitely suggest. And I've heard a lot of people say that they enjoy the experience because it's like getting to be on Twitter with your Meta followers.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Wanda, I would encourage you to grab your handle on all the platforms you're considering just to make sure that your name is reserved. And I like Threads. Threads I know is a Meta product. They just hired a new head of, or they did put a new head of Threads in place. So the former head is out. There's a new guy leading Threads. He's our former director of product. So yeah, I would give Threads a shot. Um, and if you enjoy TikTok, keep sharing that content and take a crack at posting on TikTok.
Yeah, I agree. TikTok, you should absolutely be making content for TikTok, Wanda. PWN will pay you for that. We source our members to create content for us. And that's another just like great piece of advice right there is, when you have a community that you're a part of and you're trying to get the word out, I mean, just source them to make content for you. When you're a small team. That's absolutely another thing you can do. Another place that we're really trying to like build our following is YouTube. It's been a really great like repository for us of all of these great like trainings and events and all these things that we've done in the past. Because we really have created so many resources. And so it's almost like a little university. But we really do need to get more into like creating more short form videos and reels. And that's where we really want our members to like step up and take center stage.
Thank you all for that. And I will pass it on over for Jeremiah.
Thanks, Max, and thanks for this powerhouse panel. This is a wonderful way to spend an hour today. Um, and you know, hearing a lot of paralleling with you, Victoria, what you're talking about over at PWN. We work with our prep users union. We'll pay them some honoraria to record some videos for us and stuff. We have some videographers that we work for. Work. Sometimes it feels like we're working for them, but we work with them. And we've been trying to create more of that visual content because I used to work for an organization where it was all written content, and it felt like we worked so hard, and then no one saw that information. And so that's where we're trying, and to me, that's the heritage of a lot of AIDS activism, because back in the 80s, people in ACT UP, they knew to get a camera and be there and make your own content, long before we had social media. And so to me, this is that modern iteration of it. That's my point. My question is, and DJ, you and I have talked about this in the past in some of our sort of, work together and everything, is, activists are always trying to game the system, and to make ourselves bigger than our resources allow us to be. But this is harder, in a lot of ways, because there's so much capitalism at play here, that people can pay to have their posts get so much out there. You want to get influencers and get DJ, as you call it, surround sound sort of experience. Like you have to pay, quite a bit. And so a question I have is, I think it's worth trying, and you keep doing what you can. So one, how possible is it for us to game the system if you don't have a large budget? And two, is the answer just that I'm coming from an organizational standpoint, do we really just need more comms budgets if we're going to really be able to, or be thinking about using resources differently if we're really going to get that surround sound effect? So, what's the money like for this, and what can we do if we don't have it?
That's such a good question. I'll take a crack at it. I would say the answer is both. So when you're posting organically, you're posting typically to people who already agree with you. You're to your community, people who are following you, and if you get lucky, then your content gets shared and it gains some mileage. And if you're really lucky, it goes viral and it gets on a For You page and gets in front of people who may not have been following you. But for the most part, most people will need to put money behind their content to reach new audiences. I think the opportunity for organizations and activists is that when we're talking about video content, TikTok has really democratized what it means to create video. In the old days, like video content had to be really polished. It had to have a high production quality to it, and that's not the case anymore. Jeremiah recorded a video this week that was just a direct to camera, him talking about an urgent issue, and I think that's a type of content that is going to move. It's authentic, and if it's timely, it drives urgency, and the best content's wrapped in a personal story or communicates a why. And so if you are posting at the right time, authentically, and you're passionate and fired up, typically, hopefully, it will catch some fire. So, um, but a budget always helps. And it always helps to have some validators who are helping to echo your message.
Mhm. And there's also a lot of sometimes just a quick Google search, you can find ways to kind of, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but you can find ways to kind of like game the algorithm. And you don't want to do things like too off the wall, but like one thing I learned, I was at one point I was using like Hootsuite and realized that Meta deprioritizes content that's posted through, even though you can use Hootsuite, it deprioritizes content that's posted through a third party. So little things like that, making again, like we talked about with our viral post tagging, when it's relevant, tagging others. Even as organizations, like there's strength in numbers. So if we're posting something and we're collaborating with, say, AVAC or GLAD, on Instagram, you can share it as a collaborative post and it'll show to both of your audiences or whoever you invite as a collaborator. So just learning like little ways to kind of game the algorithm, not to the point that you're forcing content down people's throat because you don't want people to start unfollowing and blocking you. So, or clicking not interested. But there are little things that you can do to kind of increase access and the reach of your posts that don't cost anything.
Can I add to that? I would say Michael has a really good point about doing your own desk research. And as advocates, leveraging the coalitions that you're a part of. So, the Center for American Progress, for example, does a really good job at social listening, and they try to get groups to, they share their information daily. So it's, what are they learning about how the platforms are moving and what posts are traveling the furthest on a daily basis. And there's a new organization that just launched called Resonate, and Resonate is also sharing insights on a daily basis on what's moving online. So it would encourage groups to connect with both of them. And then third is for organizations, you know, yes, we're the algorithms are a black box. They're never going to tell us exactly how the algorithm is engineered on a daily basis, but platforms have partnerships teams, and they have a partnerships person for the left and the right. And so would encourage groups to at least reach out to Meta's partnerships team, to TikTok's partnerships team, to at least try to get some of their time.
Yeah, DJ, you took the words out of my mouth. I think like those partnerships are so important. They have been for us. Like PWN's executive director is like a TikTok influencer of her own right, Marnina the Queen. And so she has been reaching out to other people in the, like health and lifestyle, like HIV TikTok community and saying, hey, can we partner? And then we open up to that audience. But Jeremiah, I also wanted to speak to like the funding issue because I think that's really crucial. Um, we're in a space now like philanthropists don't tend to fund communications. And it's something I think we really need to push back on, considering how important like messaging and narrative is to actual change. Like they want to fund campaigns, but not necessarily like operating costs, which communications absolutely is not. It is organizing. And I think we need to push back on that and also stop relying so heavily on foundations and do more grassroots fundraising so we can really direct the flow of like where we want those resources to go. I think that's absolutely crucial for the future of the movement.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for that question. I'm going to ask two questions that came out of the chat just because of I'm conscious of time right now. With that, so uh, one of the questions in chat is especially when it comes down to digital advocacy, how has it looked for bilingual audiences? How have you integrated language justice into social media aspects? And then the other question is a lot of these teams, as we just kind of talked about, a lot of these teams are a team of one or really a team of like half capacity in order to do this work. And what recommendations or thoughts on around like how in which you prioritize different platforms or how in which you engage with different platforms, be it that many of our communication teams are small but mighty.
On being a team of one, I'll try to take a crack at that. But Michael, you should always also jump in being a small team. I would say if you're a team of one, lean into your volunteers. I would I'm assuming, I'm sure that you have you're really engaged supporters who are willing to put in the work because they believe in the cause, they believe in the message you're sharing, and rally those people on Pete's campaign. We had, presidential campaigns, there's always more to do. And we were lucky we had a really supportive group of digital volunteers that wanted to create content for us and take on certain things. We weren't a team of one, but that was an important lesson to me. And I think um, it's always important for nonprofits and groups to leverage their supporters in the right ways. And so would work with your volunteers, and then I would work with the resources you have, even as small as having a Canva template. Like I said earlier, I think sometimes timing is more important than perfection. Just making sure that you have a steady stream of content getting out there. And uh, yeah.
I can speak a little bit to Maggie's question around bilingual audiences and language justice. I actually used to, before I got into the HIV field, was in the immigrant justice space for many, many years. That's been like most of my career. And, creating bilingual content all the time. I think it's really important to consider um, if your audience is monolingual or if they are bilingual. I think that's going to really change the way that you can post. Another thing I would say is we're in an era now where AI is making it uh, really simple to create content in other languages, and I think we should be so careful of that. There's absolutely no telling. There's no like cultural nuance. There's no like we're an organization that chooses very carefully like the way we talk about gender, the way we talk about so many different things, and it's so tempting to want to just push that AI button and be like, here, and I'm opening up to a whole other audience. But I think it's really important to consider, um, what quality content you're going to put out once you do that. But I think, yeah, just get to know your audience. It's so much more, it's double the work. It's double the work if you're doing, bilingual, but it's absolutely so worth it. It will also open you up to twice as many people potentially.
And something I'm guilty of not always doing that I should do more, but also it's important making sure that when you're making posts that you're using alt text for people who may be visually impaired. Also, there are charts you can find online, just do like a Google search, but that can let you know like what colors go good with like certain backgrounds, not just because it's visually appealing, but again, because if people are visually impaired, um, it may be easier for them to see, it may be more difficult to see certain colors on other colors. So, also that's a good way of making sure that your content is accessible to as many people as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you all for answering the questions. Right before we close out, I do want Michael to share our Accountability August toolkit that is fresh out the presses and is a helpful guide for to be able to share different social media pieces throughout the month of August and as we're holding our legislators accountable. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, I just dropped it in the chat. I was literally, let me share screen. I was literally working on glitches as people were entering the room. So there were like a few glitches with the graphics and in text, but we have it all fixed now. So, as you can see, this is on our SaveHIVFunding.org website. I just dropped the link in the chat. So it's Accountability August Advocacy Toolkit. We highlight some hashtags that you can use along with multiple graphics that you can post online to kind of give some diversity. So there's 4 different graphics. I'm going to make these graphics clickable so it's easier to download. We were just trying to get it up really quick, but you can click the link here for social media graphics for any of these graphics. And we also have a poster. So if you're going to any rallies, and you want to carry Save HIV funding with you, that's 18 by 11 poster as well. Um, you can also call your senators and representatives in social media posts. We made it easy to click. So it'll take you right there in the page. Like right there, but I'm gonna manually scroll so that you can see everything that's included. So we have a brief overview of why it's important that we have this action alert, and ways that you could take action, including signing up for this next Save HIV funding training, which is on direct action. And also more information about how you can call your representatives, along with a suggested call script here. And also sample social media posts so you can find your representatives so that you can tag them, social media handles. And one thing that I just want to like, we have short posts and longer posts. If you're still active on X, sometimes you have to take the longer posts and make them like a chain of tweets. But one of the things that I want to stress that we kind of talked about earlier is, your audience. Make this for you. I've seen in past like action alerts and social media toolkits I've released. I've seen people take liberties with their own caption or use the graphic and add it in addition to a video telling their own stories. So definitely be creative with it. This isn't written in stone. This is all just suggested on how you can reach people that you're engaging with on social media. So take from it what you want, leave what you want, add what you need to make it personal and resonate with your audience. The important part is that we're actually getting the information out and mobilizing people and letting them know why this cause is so important and why they should be reaching out to their representatives. And I'll actually, if you give me 1 second, I'll review one of the graphics just so you can see what the tiny text is. So let's go with this one. So the calls to action are call Congress, and we have the number where you can call Congress and you want to tell them to fully fund HIV programs. You can write a letter to your editor, and we're going to add a sample letter to the editor to our toolkit. That should be up really soon. In district meetings, you can contact Max to find out how to schedule meetings with your representatives, and you can download the poster from our toolkit and take it to any rallies or community events that you're going to so that people can find out more about the Save HIV funding campaign. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Thank you so very much, Michael. I also want to give a huge shout out to Victoria and DJ for helping us with this training. Again, letting people know how to better be digital advocates. You can join us for our next training, which will be a 2 hour long training around direct action. That will be starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time, going till 3 p.m. Eastern time. This will be our first training that will go over an hour. I want to thank again these wonderful panelists for doing us with the wonderful information that we do to be better digital advocates. And as was like advocacy surround sound, I love that one. So thank y'all so very much. I know we went a little bit over, but thank y'all so very much for joining us. We will have a recording of this sent out in the month of August. Thank y'all so very much, and have a good rest of your day.